Have you ever felt like you're standing on the edge of a cliff, staring into the unknown, wondering what comes next? We've all experienced that moment, caught between where we've been and where we're going, with no clear direction in sight. The uncertainty of life can feel heavy, weighing on the heart, filling the mind with endless questions. Yet, in the midst of all that doubt, there is one undeniable truth. God already knows what's ahead for you. Life doesn't come with a detailed map. We often walk through seasons where the road ahead is unclear, where we have no idea what's waiting just around the corner. That kind of uncertainty can feel overwhelming, sometimes even paralyzing. We spend so much time trying to predict the future, trying to plan out every moment, hoping to control every outcome. But let me remind you of something today. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to see the whole picture. It's okay to step forward in faith, even when you can't see what's coming next, because God is already there. We use up so much energy worrying about the unknown, forgetting one powerful truth. God is never surprised by our uncertainty. He's never caught off guard by life's twists and turns. The unknown is not something to fear when we understand that God knows exactly what's next for us. It's in those moments of uncertainty that His strength, His wisdom, and His perfect timing become most evident. Think about it. How many times in your life has God led you through something that didn't make sense at the time, only for you to later realize that it was exactly what you needed? When you find yourself wondering what's next, hold on to the truth that God already knows, and because He knows, you can trust that He is guiding you every step of the way. The unknown is not your enemy. Too often we treat uncertainty as something to be feared, something standing in the way of our peace, happiness, and success. But what if I told you that the very thing you're afraid of, the unknown, is actually where God's greatness shines the brightest? We're wired to crave certainty. We want to know what's ahead. We want control. We want a clear, detailed plan. But God doesn't work that way. He doesn't need you to have all the answers. He simply asks you to trust Him when you don't. In seasons of uncertainty, our faith is stretched, strengthened, and refined. When we release our need for control and embrace the unknown, we give God space to move in ways beyond what we could ever imagine. God specializes in the unknown. He doesn't require us to understand everything. He just asks us to take the next step in faith, even when we can't see the whole journey. Think about Abraham. God told him to leave everything familiar, his family, his home, his security, to go to a land he had never seen, a place he didn't even know. Can you imagine how much uncertainty must have filled his heart? Yet Abraham stepped out, not because he had all the details, but because he trusted the one who was leading him. And God didn't let him down. The unknown became the pathway to God's promises. So today, instead of fearing uncertainty, embrace it. Because in that space of not knowing, God is waiting to reveal Himself in ways that will transform your life. The unknown is not a dead end. It's an opportunity for God to do something extraordinary in your story. Right now, you might feel like life is a puzzle with too many missing pieces. You can't see how everything fits together, and that can be frustrating. But here's what I want you to remember. God has a plan for you, and His plan is greater than anything you could design for yourself. It's easy to feel pressured by the expectations of the world. Deadlines, responsibilities, and uncertainties can make it seem like you're falling behind. But trusting God's plan means resting in the truth that He's already mapped out your future, even when you can't see it. His plan doesn't require your full understanding. It simply requires your trust. Joseph's story in the Bible is a perfect example. His life was full of betrayal, hardships, and unexpected detours. Yet through it all, God was weaving together a story of redemption and purpose. It wasn't until the right moment that Joseph could look back and understand how every trial had led him to where he was meant to be. Your life is not a random series of events. God is working even in the moments that don't make sense. Every delay, every challenge, and every unanswered prayer is part of His divine plan. One day you'll look back and see that everything was leading you to exactly where you needed to be. Have you ever found yourself asking, why is this happening? Or why am I still waiting? We struggle with God's timing because it rarely matches our own. We want things to happen now, but God works differently. His timing is perfect, even when it doesn't make sense to us. We rush through life trying to get to the next chapter, the next opportunity, the next breakthrough. But God's timing is not hurried, it's deliberate. Every waiting season has a purpose. What feels like a delay is often God's way of preparing you for something greater than you imagined. David was anointed as king, but he didn't take the throne immediately. Instead, he spent years in the wilderness, running, fighting, and learning to trust God in ways he never would have otherwise. His waiting season wasn't wasted. It was shaping him for his purpose. If you're waiting today, waiting for a breakthrough, waiting for an answer, remember this: God's delay is not a denial. He is at work in your life, preparing you for what's ahead. You are exactly where you need to be, and when the time is right, He will open the doors that no one can shut. So often, we think we know what's best for ourselves. We pray for certain outcomes, convinced that if God would just answer in the way we expect, everything would fall into place. But sometimes, God's greatest blessings come in the form of unanswered prayers. He sees what we cannot see. He knows what we truly need, even when we don't. The things we ask for may not always align with His purpose for our lives. But when we trust Him fully, we realize that His plans are far better than our own. So if life isn't unfolding the way you expected, don't be discouraged. God is not ignoring you. He is protecting you. He is guiding you towards something greater, and when the time is right, He will bring everything together in ways that will leave you in awe. No matter what season you're in, no matter how uncertain the road ahead seems, trust that God already knows what's next. He is already making a way for you. You don't have to figure everything out. Just take the next step. Trust in His plan and know that He is leading you exactly where you're meant to be. You are not lost. You are not forgotten. You are exactly where God wants you, and He is preparing you for something beyond your imagination. So release the worry, let go of the fear, and step forward in faith, because what's ahead is greater than anything you could ever plan for yourself. Here's your script with slight variations while keeping the meaning and length intact. We often get caught up in desiring things that seem fulfilling in the moment, things that appear good on the surface, but may not be what's truly best for our growth and future. Look at the example of the Apostle Paul. He pleaded with God to remove the thorn in his flesh, something that brought him great suffering, yet God did not take it away. Instead, He told Paul, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." 2 Corinthians 12:9. In other words, what Paul thought he needed wasn't what was truly necessary. What he actually required was an experience of God's strength in the midst of his weakness. When you feel like God isn't answering your prayers the way you expected, remember that He knows exactly what is best for you. Sometimes the things withheld from us are not rejections, they are divine protection. Trust that God sees your needs from an eternal perspective, and His provision will always align perfectly with your purpose. He will provide exactly what you need, exactly when you need it. During seasons of uncertainty, it's easy to feel stuck, like nothing is happening. You might find yourself looking around, wondering why your breakthrough hasn't arrived, why your prayers seem to go unanswered, or why things are unfolding so much slower than you had hoped. But here's the truth. God is preparing you for blessings beyond what you can currently imagine. What feels like waiting is actually divine preparation. God never wastes a season. Every moment of waiting, every challenge, every setback is part of His plan to equip you for what's next. You may not understand it now, but every step is creating space for the blessings He has in store for you. Think about the Israelites. They wandered in the desert for 40 years, not because God had abandoned them, but because He was preparing them to enter the Promised Land. That wilderness experience, though difficult, was essential. It was a time of growth, of learning to rely on God, of being shaped into a people ready to receive their blessing. The Promised Land was already theirs, but they needed to be ready to step into it. Your blessings may be just around the corner, but God will only release them when you are prepared to steward them well. He doesn't just hand you opportunities, He prepares you for them. Sometimes He's strengthening your character, refining your patience, or molding your heart before He opens the door to your next season. There are unseen blessings being built even as you walk through the unknown. So don't be discouraged in the waiting. God is working behind the scenes in ways you cannot yet perceive. He is shaping your future even when you don't feel it. And when the time is right, He will pour out blessings that will exceed anything you ever hoped for. Keep trusting, keep growing, because your preparation is positioning you for the breakthrough that's on its way. There's something powerful that happens when we choose faith over fear. Fear tries to paralyze us, to make us question our future, to doubt our purpose, to second-guess every step we take. Fear wants to convince us that the unknown is too risky, too overwhelming, that we are not capable of handling what's ahead. But faith does the opposite. It acknowledges the unknown and steps forward boldly, knowing that God is already there. Fear is a natural human response. It's normal to feel uneasy about what we cannot see, to feel anxious about what we cannot control. But here's the truth. Fear is a liar. Fear will whisper that you're not strong enough, that you're not prepared, that you're too small for the challenge ahead. But faith will remind you that God is more than enough, that He has already gone before you, that through Him you have everything you need to walk boldly into what's next. Think about Peter walking on water. He stepped out of the boat in the middle of a raging storm, doing something that seemed impossible. For a moment, his faith kept him afloat, but as soon as he allowed fear to creep in, he began to sink. Faith will keep you steady, but fear will pull you under. You don't have to have all the answers to take the next step. What you need is the courage to step forward in faith, trusting that God is walking beside you, even when you can't see the full path ahead. Fear will always try to convince you that you're not ready, but faith will tell you that with God, you are already equipped for what comes next. The fear of the unknown may try to hold you back, but faith in the one who holds your future will propel you forward. So today, choose faith over fear. Step into the unknown with confidence, knowing that God has already prepared the way. Don't let fear dictate your actions. Let faith be your guide, leading you toward the breakthrough waiting on the other side. There are moments in life when uncertainty clouds your path. You might look at your circumstances and wonder if you're where you're supposed to be, if you've missed an opportunity, if you've strayed too far from your purpose. It's easy to feel lost when the way forward isn't clear, but let me remind you today, your purpose is secure in God's hands. You are not here by accident. God didn't create you for random circumstances or meaningless wandering. From the very beginning, He knew you, He designed you with intention, He placed unique gifts and talents within you. Even when you can't see it, your purpose is unfolding according to His perfect plan. Look at Esther. She was just an ordinary girl in an extraordinary situation, facing obstacles that seemed impossible to overcome. Yet God had a purpose for her. To save her people. She didn't fully understand her purpose at first, but when the moment came, she rose to the occasion. Her purpose was always secure, even when she couldn't see it clearly. Your purpose is just as secure. It's not determined by your circumstances, your past mistakes, or your doubts. It is anchored in the fact that God has already prepared good works for you to accomplish. Ephesians 2:10. You may not know every detail of what's ahead, but trust this. The steps you take today are leading you toward fulfilling the purpose He has for you. Don't allow uncertainty or setbacks to make you believe your purpose has been lost or delayed. God's plan for you is firm and unshakable. He is working behind the scenes, orchestrating events, aligning opportunities, bringing you closer to where you need to be. Trust that even in times of uncertainty, He is still guiding you. Change, it's one of the most unsettling words in the human vocabulary. The idea of stepping into something new, something unknown, can stir up anxiety. We are creatures of habit, and when things feel comfortable, we resist change. But hear this today. Change is not your enemy. It is often the very thing God uses to move you into your next season of growth. God doesn't allow change in your life just to disrupt your routine. He uses it to prepare you for something greater. When God shifts your circumstances, it's not because something is wrong. It's because He is setting you up for something better. You may not see it yet, but God does. The change you're afraid of is often the very thing required to elevate you to your next level. Think again about Abraham. God called him to leave everything familiar, his home, his security, his comfort, and step into the unknown. Abraham didn't have a full blueprint, yet he obeyed because he trusted the one who was leading him. His willingness to embrace change led him straight into God's promises. The same is true for you. The changes in your life aren't meant to break you, they are meant to shape you. They are making room for something greater. So instead of resisting change, embrace it. Step forward in faith, knowing that God's plan is always for your good. Even when you don't have all the answers, He does. And He is leading you towards something beyond what you could ever imagine. Grant, he saw himself in a position of leadership, but he had no idea how God would bring it to pass. If Joseph had tried to make his dreams happen in his own strength, he would have failed. But God had a bigger plan, one that included trials, setbacks, and years of waiting. Yet in the end, Joseph's reality far exceeded his initial dream. He didn't just lead, he saved a nation. The same is true for you. The dreams you have are good, but God's vision for your life is even greater. Sometimes He delays certain things because He's preparing you for something far bigger than what you originally hoped for. It's easy to get frustrated when things don't happen according to your timeline, but trust that God's plan is unfolding exactly as it should. What you think is a delay is actually divine alignment. Maybe you've been holding on to a dream, wondering if it will ever come to pass. Maybe you've faced disappointments that made you question whether you heard God correctly. But hear this today. God is not finished. If He planted that dream in your heart, He will bring it to completion in a way that is beyond anything you could orchestrate on your own. So, don't limit yourself to your own vision. Be open to the fact that God might be setting you up for something even greater than what you originally imagined. His ways are higher, His plans are perfect, and His timing is always right. There are times when we find ourselves in places we never expected, situations that feel too big, too overwhelming, too impossible to handle. Maybe it's a calling that feels too daunting, a challenge that seems insurmountable, or a dream that looks too far out of reach. In those moments, it's easy to feel inadequate, to doubt whether we have what it takes to walk the path ahead. But here's the truth. You were never meant to do it alone. God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called. Look at Moses. When God called him to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, Moses immediately listed all the reasons why he wasn't the right person for the job. He wasn't a strong speaker. He didn't feel equipped. He doubted his ability. But God didn't choose Moses because of his skills. He chose him because of his heart and his willingness to obey. And with God's power, Moses led an entire nation to freedom. The same applies to you. If God has placed something in front of you, He will equip you for it. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to feel completely ready. You simply need to say yes and trust that God will provide everything you need along the way. Too often we disqualify ourselves before we even begin. We let fear, doubt, and insecurity convince us that we're not capable. But the truth is, if God is calling you to something, He has already placed everything you need inside of you. He doesn't make mistakes, and He doesn't give you more than you can handle with His help. So instead of focusing on what you lack, focus on who He is. Instead of worrying about your own limitations, remember that God's power is made perfect in weakness. Stop waiting to feel ready. Stop waiting for perfect conditions. Step forward in faith, knowing that the same God who called you will also sustain you. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to trust the one who does. One of the biggest lies we believe is that we are alone in our struggles, that no one understands what we're going through, that we have to fight our battles on our own, But the truth is, God is with you in every moment, in every struggle, in every hardship. He has never left you, and He never will. When life feels heavy, when the weight of your circumstances is too much to bear, remember that you don't have to carry it alone. God is your strength, your refuge, your ever-present help in times of trouble. He sees what you're facing. He knows the burdens you're carrying, and He is inviting you to lay them at His feet. Jesus said in Matthew 11:28, "Come to me all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." That's not just a nice sentiment, that's a promise. You were never meant to do life in your own strength. You were created to rely on God, to draw from His power, to lean on His wisdom. Think of David. Before he became king, he spent years running from Saul, hiding in caves, facing danger at every turn. But in the midst of it all, David didn't rely on his own strength. He relied on God. He poured out his heart in the Psalms, crying out in moments of despair, but always returning to the truth that God was his refuge and his defender. You have that same assurance today. No matter what you're facing, no matter how overwhelmed you feel, God is your source of strength. You don't have to carry it all. You don't have to have all the answers. You simply need to rest in the fact that God is with you and He will carry you through. So today, release the weight. Let go of the pressure to do it all on your own. Trust that God is holding you, that He sees you, that He is working on your behalf even when you can't see it. He has never failed you before and He won't start now. Faith is not about having all the answers. It's not about knowing exactly how things will unfold. It's about trusting that even when you don't see the full picture, God does. It's about believing that even in the waiting, even in the unknown, even in the struggle, God is still good. Sometimes we want every detail before we take a step. We want the plan laid out in front of us, the guarantees, the security of knowing exactly how things will turn out. But faith doesn't work that way. Faith is stepping out even when you don't have all the answers. It's moving forward even when you can't see what's next. Think of Joshua and the Israelites as they approached the walls of Jericho. God told them to march around the city for 7 days. No weapons, no battle plan, just faith and obedience. It didn't make sense. It wasn't the strategy they expected, but they obeyed, and on the 7th day the walls came crashing down. Your breakthrough might not come in the way you expect. The answers you're waiting for might not arrive in the way you imagined, but God's ways are always higher. His timing is always perfect. So today, take that step of faith. Move forward, even if you don't have every detail figured out. Trust that God is leading you, that He is making a way, that He is working all things together for your good. The road ahead might not be clear, but the one who leads you is. Keep walking, keep believing, because your best days are still ahead. Joseph's dreams were huge. He envisioned his family bowing before him, but God's plans for Joseph were far beyond anything he could have imagined. What Joseph didn't realize at the time was that God was preparing him not just for leadership, but to save an entire nation and to rise to the position of second in command over Egypt. His dreams were just the beginning of the extraordinary purpose God had for his life. Similarly, the plans you have may seem significant to you, but God's plans are immeasurably greater. He has a purpose for you that surpasses anything you can currently comprehend. The Bible declares in Ephesians 3:20, "Now to Him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to His power that is at work within us." If you could catch even a glimpse of the incredible future God has already prepared for you, it would leave you in awe. You may not understand it now, but trust that God is leading you to places beyond what you have ever dreamed of, places that will draw you closer to Him and fulfill His higher purpose for your life. So, as you dream big, remember that God is dreaming even bigger for you. His plans extend far beyond anything you could ask for or imagine. Surrender your plans to Him, trust in His divine purpose, and know that the best is yet to come. One of the deepest fears we experience in life is the fear of being alone, especially when we are stepping into the unknown. It's easy to feel isolated, as though we're navigating uncharted territory without guidance or support. But hear this truth today: you are never alone in the unknown. God promises in His Word that He will never leave you nor forsake you. That means that in every uncertain moment, in every season of waiting, and with every step you take into the future, you are never alone. God is with you through it all. Consider the story of Moses. When God called him to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, Moses felt overwhelmed. He doubted his own abilities, questioned his worthiness, and worried that he wasn't qualified. But God did not leave Moses to figure things out on his own. In Exodus 3:12, God reassured him, saying, "I will be with you." When Moses faced the wilderness, when the journey seemed impossible, God was right there, guiding him, providing for him, and leading him toward the promised land. Just as God was with Moses, He is with you. When you find yourself in the midst of challenges, when you're standing at the edge of uncertainty, never believe the lie that you've been left behind. God is right there beside you, covering you with His love, strength, and wisdom. He knows what's ahead for you, and He will equip you for every step of the journey. When loneliness creeps in, when the road ahead feels uncertain, when fear whispers that you are on your own, remind yourself of this unshakable truth. God is with you. You are never walking through the unknown alone. You have a mighty God who stands beside you, guiding you, and promising never to abandon you. Lean into that truth and trust in His presence. He has already gone before you to prepare the way, and He will continue walking with you every step of the journey. When life feels uncertain, when you don't know what's coming next, and when the path ahead seems obscured, it's easy to lose hope. But hope is the anchor that keeps your soul steady in the storms of life, and the greatest source of hope is found in the promises of God. His promises are not dictated by your circumstances. They do not waver with the ups and downs of life. His promises are eternal, unchanging, and powerful. When you place your hope in what He has spoken, you are securing yourself to something far greater than fleeting emotions or temporary situations. You are anchoring yourself to His truth. The Bible is filled with stories of God fulfilling His promises, often in ways that seemed impossible at the time. Abraham, Sarah, Noah, David, they all faced seasons of uncertainty, moments when the way forward seemed unclear. But they clung to God's promises, knowing that He is always faithful to do what He says. Look at the Israelites. They were trapped in slavery, suffering under oppression, and it seemed as though they had been forgotten. Yet God had promised to deliver them. Even when their present situation made it seem impossible, His word was greater than their circumstances. He parted the Red Sea, led them through the wilderness, and brought them into the land He had promised them. Today you may feel like you can't see the way forward. You may be in a waiting season, wondering when things will change. But know this, God's promises still stand. He has promised to never leave you, to guide you, to provide for you, and to give you a future filled with hope. No matter how difficult things may seem, God is faithful to bring His word to pass. So hold on to hope. Hope in God's promises is not just wishful thinking, it is a firm expectation that what He has spoken over your life will come to fulfillment. He knows what's ahead for you, and He is faithful to make it happen. Your future is in His hands, and He is leading you into something far greater than you can even comprehend. Keep your hope anchored in Him, because the best is yet to come. Take a moment and reflect on where you are right now in life. Maybe you're facing a season of uncertainty. Maybe you're at a crossroads, unsure of which path to take. Or perhaps you're in a time of waiting, feeling like nothing is moving forward. It's easy to feel overwhelmed, like you're walking blindly with no clear direction. But let me remind you of something powerful today. God knows exactly what's next for you. You may not have all the answers, and that's okay. You don't need to, because you have something far greater. You have a God who sees the end from the beginning, a God whose plans surpass your own, a God who is walking beside you, guiding you, and preparing you for what's to come. When life feels uncertain, hold on to this truth. God is working behind the scenes. You are not alone in the unknown. You are not left to figure everything out on your own. His timing is perfect. His plans are flawless. His love for you is unwavering. Every challenge you face, every setback, every season of waiting, it's not a sign that God has forgotten you. It's evidence that He is preparing you for something greater. He is refining you, strengthening your faith, and positioning you for the blessings He has in store for you. You may not see it yet, but God is working in ways beyond your understanding. So, let go of the fear. Release the doubt. Trust in the unshakable promises of God. Your journey is unfolding exactly as it should, even when you can't see the full picture. Though the next steps may be unclear to you, they are not unclear to God. His plans for you are bigger than you could ever imagine. Keep walking in faith, even when the way forward seems uncertain. He knows what's ahead, and His plans for your life are filled with purpose, peace, and a future that is brighter than you can comprehend. No matter where you find yourself today, trust that your tomorrow is firmly held in God's hands. He already knows what's coming next for you, and when you place your trust in Him, He will lead you into places beyond what you ever thought possible. Keep your faith strong, hold on to hope. Know with confidence that your future is secure in the hands of the One who has planned it all from the very beginning. The best is still ahead.